What is up, ladies and gents, Nolly here, and welcome to another Payday 2 video. Today I have for you the revised jacket build. It is following the update 167, which brought out Sociopath 2.0, and thanks to some wonderful new options Sociopath brings, I feel like it has the perfect jacket feel. Now, Jacket has always been one of the absolute most popular DLC characters in Payday 2, no small part owing that to the success and fandom of Hotline Miami. But he's an interesting character and one that it's always been a shame it was hard to make good use out of his perk deck. The Sociopath perk deck was always fun to use and actually had some really nice new concepts, but it never had the survivability that was really required to work on the hardest difficulties and put into the most effective builds. Well, thanks to the most recent update, these things have changed, and as such you guys can be true Sociopaths with this setup I'm going to show you right here. So, let's start things off with the primary and secondary before we get on to the perk deck, which is obviously the most important change. And as you guys know, one of the primary focuses of this build is going to be melee. Now, we don't have a ton of survivability still with Sociopath. It's got some ideas, but it's not the same as a dodge build on one down. You will have a harder time staying alive. So instead, it's all about doing as much damage as quickly and effectively as possible. Now, the first way we do that is through the airbow. The airbow is one of the most power creepy weapons in the game before Overkill decided to attack it in update 167 and basically make it a non-viable dodge weapon, which, while it was the most fun way to run the weapon, and I think it's a shame they chose to nerf it in that fashion, I think it would have been more of a problem had it just been left alone. But what that means is the weapon is still a bit of a monster, it just doesn't work in certain builds. Now, Sociopath does not suit well with dodge builds, so we can automatically shove it in right here and know we will have a good one down style weapon. And that's exactly what the airbow is going to do for us right here. It's going to have a ton of kill potential, fits nicely into the build, and you guys can run it with something like the explosive rounds if you so wish. I would not recommend that, and I actually have mine having a lot modified for total ammo, I believe here. I actually have 3 airbows, that's how good the weapon is. But that is, of course, our very strong primary, and a secondary is the China Lake, or the China Puff. I do actually have Wolf Hood on right now, that's why you see these FedNet coloured icons and different weapon names. The China Lake is, of course, its real world name. This has always been a really good one-down weapon, ton of utility, ton of damage, great at dealing with large groups, which the regular airbow is not fantastic at. I run this with just the team boost on, basically no attachments. But, with our sweet skin, so we look a little more stylish. The melee is obviously really important in a melee build, and I might surprise you guys by not running the Shinsakuto Katana. Now, I would have loved to have put the Carpenter's Delight with this build, go for the hammer, go for the full jacket, but unfortunately it just is not nearly as viable as the other options that I'm going to show you. So, the way I have run it, and I run it in the gameplay, is with the Switchblade. There's a couple of reasons for this. The Switchblade swings just as fast as the Nova Shank, which I showed off in the initial Sociopath update gameplay, but it actually has a slightly faster time for you to pull your weapon out. As such, it has a better feel to it, and I found that it was the most effective weapon for this style of build that was all about switching between melee and your primary. However, there are some other good options. Like I said, Nova Shank is not a bad shout whatsoever. Even something like the Electrical Brass Knuckles, while not dealing as much damage, the extra interruption is quite strong. Similarly, I believe the Kunai also has the same swing speed, that was pointed out to me in the comments, and of course it has the interruption and damage over time. Now the damage over time is not effective at all, because you just do tons of bursts with this thing, but what is effective is the potential to interrupt enemies, so this may well be a worthwhile pick for those of you, and the Katana itself is absolutely not bad. Now if you want a melee weapon with a bit of extra range, the Motherforker has you covered. I personally don't care for that, and like I said, I found the Switchblade is just the most functional melee to run in these setups, so I recommend that to you guys. As far as throwable is concerned, I run the Dynamite. You guys can run whatever you want with this build. While we have good options to take down bulldozers, you guys might want the throwing knife or throwing axe, or you could go for the Molotov cocktail for that AoE DPS. Up to you guys. Doctor's Bag is pretty essential. We'll get onto that with the skills, and like I said, this is not a dodge build, so it's got to be a ICTV build. So, before I run onto the build and have a look at what exactly we've done to make this viable, despite the fact we're going to be a glass cannon in some heavy armor. I know that doesn't make a great deal of sense. Let's quickly have a glance over at Sociopath. I don't want to spend too long on this, But let's just quickly, the reason why Sociopath is so much better now is because thanks to Tension, Clean Hit, and Overdose, now these skills have always had some degree of regeneration. We have 60 points of armor regen for every kill we get, especially when meleeing, we know that is secured, and 10% health, and that's every second that can go off. So that is not bad regen at all. It's pretty wonderful sustain. On top of that, thanks to some recent updates, we also get, 10% extra armor from 2 of these skills. Plus, we get damage reduction when surrounded or when close to enemies. We also get more, like I said, when surrounded, thanks to Overdog and the changes there. Showdown has always been a fun and good skill, having that chance to put enemies into panic, basically interrupting them and making them much easier to kill. If you guys stab someone to death, it makes sense. And last but not least at all is the most important skill. It's Overdog. It's the very first one in the tree, and it gives us 10 times melee damage on our second hit, as long as that hit is within 1 second of the first, and that continues on and on. Now, there has been some weird interactions with enemies. I don't know whether it just sort of works per enemy or whether this is a boost that continues to stack over. To be honest, with fast swinging melee weapons, it doesn't really matter, but that is the main reason that I would go for the absolute fastest instead of the katana. I believe the katana gets 2 swings off per second, whereas you will get just over 3 with the vast majority of the ones that I've pointed out to you, like the switchblade. So then, we know why Sociopath is good, we know why we're running it. Let's have a look at the skills that we use to complement this. This is a 1-down build, so we're going to go up through the medic tree, and I do recommend you go the combat doctor route as opposed to the uppers route. That's primarily due to some of our fugitive skills we get onto later, but Inspire is basically essential for the hardest difficulty if you guys are going to be team players. Moving over to Enforcer, we have a ton of points over here in the middle tree. We have Resilience, because I hate flashbangs. We basic out Transporter and Die Hard to move us up to Shock and Awe. We're going to be meleeing a lot. We do have some good ways to deal with shields, to be honest, but there's no real reason to run Bulldozer, or Bullseye I should say, so you can run Shock and Awe comfortably, and know you can quite easily deal with shields with your melee weapon as well. Finally, Iron Man, of course, for the extra armor and the ICTV. Technician, we have absolutely no skills. You can move your skills around if you want Hardware Expert and Dill Sergeant. They're definitely not a bad idea. Moving over to Ghost, we just have some movement speed here through Second Wind, which is useful. It is going to give you quite a serious movement speed boost, even with your big heavy armor. And I also run Duck and Cover and Parkour, as I do in basically all my builds. Finally, we have Fugitive. This is where the bulk of our skills are found. 9 lives is so important on the 1-down difficulty. I actually do get Running from Death, and obviously rather not if I could avoid it. These would be nice skills to put elsewhere. This is primarily to get us up to Messiah. You don't necessarily have to run the build with Messiah, but to be less of an irritation for your teammates, or if you're playing solo with AI, as I do for a lot of the gameplay, this is a worthwhile skill to bring. So Running from Death is going to give you some improvements, including the ability to move faster after you've been revived, and like I said, it pushes you up to Messiah, giving you the ability to self-revive, and to continuously do that if you constantly, every time you go down, are interacting with your med bags. That gives you another charge, and as such, you're not a problem for the team. This means you can comfortably let yourself die, use the Swan Song from it. As you see, we have Swan Song right here, as most 1-down builds do. Get a ton of use out of that with your explosive weapon, or if you're using the airbow, you can actually just shoot the floor with the thing to basically give you infinite ammo, which is a cool little interaction some of you guys may not be aware of. But yeah, the idea is you're going to die a lot with this build. You need to be comfortable with that. You need to know I'm going to be in enemies' grills that do a lot of damage to me. I have an option, even if I don't have teammates around, with my high damage explosives, to just instantly revive myself and get myself out of the trouble, thanks to Running from Death. Finally, we have Brawler. This is a melee style build. Of course, we've got points in Brawler. We have basic martial arts. We don't need knockdown. The enemies will be dying anyway. Pumping Iron is essential though. I would say Bloodthirst is a good option. Not only does it give you that faster reload speed, which is useful for the weapons we're running, it also gives you that, like I said, basically melee execute once you've picked up a bunch of kills with your ranged weapons. Basic out Berserker, because we don't really get a lot from having the ranged weapon damage increase. Yeah, I think it gives you a one-shot kill with the airbow to the head for medics, which otherwise you wouldn't have. But honestly, medics are quite easy to deal with anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. But what is much more useful is the fact, it gives you more out with melee damage, up to 250%. Generally, at base, thanks to us running Frenzy, we're basically going to have 100% more melee damage, which is insane, especially with those extra multipliers. Moving over, like I said, we have Frenzy. This is the combo, giving us damage reduction. Yes, it means we don't get quite as much out of our perk deck. We don't really get a great deal out of clean hit, unfortunately. The regeneration is kind of counterintuitive. Sometimes it can come in handy, but generally I've not felt that to be the case. It's a bit of counter synergy, but it's not the end of the world, really. Frenzy is more just about getting that damage reduction up to 25% and basically keeping yourself at 100% extra melee damage, which is awesome. It basically means that your first swing with the Switchblade is going to hit for 120, and your second swing is going to hit for 1,200, which is going to do a ton of damage to every single enemy in the game, and it means you can get rid of basically all of them in a matter of swings. I'm a huge fan of this setup. Let's have a look at some gameplay. So you guys will have already seen a little bit of gameplay smattered throughout the first section of the video. I know it's not the world's most entertaining thing just to be staring at menus, so I did try to liven things up a little bit. That gameplay is all one down gameplay on the Hoxton Revenge mission. The house setting is absolutely ideal for this build. You have the China path to deal with enemies when they sort of group in the doorways, and for the most part you can just work your way through corridors using a mix of the melee and the airbow whenever you need a nice burst of range damage, and essentially you'll have constant procs of the Sociopath skills, and you should be in no trouble at all. This particular setup is ideal for the environment we're going to be fighting in on Hoxton Revenge. There's going to be some additional gameplay I throw in after that, which is actually on the Brooklyn 10-10 heist, also on 1 down difficulty, and that's actually showing off some alternative primary option in the Piglet. Basically, if you feel like you already have enough kill potential with this build, and you want some more AoE and utility, going for a second explosive is not a bad idea, especially if you're playing online. You know your mates can deal with a lot of troubles. Having additional ammunition to fire, as well as another weapon that can be used with Swan Song, may be worth running, and that's an alternative option if you guys want to run it in this build. Normally I wouldn't recommend running 2 explosive weapons because of certain problematic enemy types like bulldozers, but when the knife can deal with the bulldozer so well, you really don't have to worry so much, and so you can make this kind of compromise. So that's something just worth mentioning quickly there. This, I hope, is some of the most entertaining gameplay you've seen on the channel. I'm quite proud of it. I'm actually really chuffed with how the build's worked out, how viable it is, and also how much fun it is to play around with. What's also excited me is the fact that I think Beecroft made a video on a melee build the other day. It's great to see other guys getting on the melee hype train. This is fantastic. Sociopath has brought this out of people, and having more people show the viability of melee builds maybe means that I won't get kicked as often for trying to use this setup in online lobbies. Now, I have to admit, it is the kind of setup that can be a drain of your team's resources. You are, despite being heavily armoured like I mentioned, a bit of a glass cannon. Fortunately, you bring your own medkits, so for the most part you should only really have to use those. And dying a lot is basically just what happens on 1 down. Let's be honest, we expect to die, we set up for that. That's why everyone runs Swan Song, everyone runs 9 lives, things like that. Options to keep themselves alive longer, and they run basically medkits to sustain themselves even further, and that's why I run Messiah. Now, if you're with a really good group and you know your team will have your back with Inspire, there's no reason to run run Messiah, I should say, and you could maybe choose to put those points, like I said, in drill skills, or maybe run a shotgun as a primary instead of the airbow. That's another alternative option. I personally did want to really focus on melee and utility, and that's what I bring in this build, so the airbow is perfectly suited because you really don't need any skills to make it viable, and that's just the way I choose to go with it. I hope you enjoy the jacket theme as well. Like I said, I know he's a really popular character with many of you. He's an interesting character, and I hope this does him justice. It's a shame we couldn't use his mini Uzi and his melee weapon, but to be honest, to make the build viable for the 1 down difficulty, we really had to keep away from other weapons that require skills to be good, and that's basically why I've set it up like this. And as far as the Carpenter's Delight is concerned, it's just a shame. Unfortunately, it's one of the more underpowered melee weapons, more designed for knockdown, which, let's be honest, is not something we require with this build when we turn bulldozers into paper. That's the idea, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Please try this out with your friends. It is a viable 1 down build, even online. Don't worry about it. Your friends may see you going down all the time, but you have that self-sustain. You have the ability to revive yourself, so you're not a drain on your team's sort of mental capacity, where your teammates have to constantly think about inspiring you and saving Inspire for the crazy guy running at the bulldozer with the knife. That's why I've set it up like that, with a sort of team focus, as well as the fact it makes it more viable for playing with AI, who, let's be honest, unless you have a modded setup, can be a little bit difficult to get along with. I'm running Wolfhood throughout this gameplay. If you guys are interested, there is a video I made a little while ago as far as Wolfhood is concerned. I'll actually link that in the description if you guys are interested in downloading it. It's still a fantastic HUD with some additional mod options, and I brought it primarily just to show how much goddamn health enemies have on one down and how much damage the knife, this little butter knife, the switch knife, can actually put out. I think it's awesome. Give the build a go, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one.